We'll come to the party politics in a moment, but I just want to start with some of the wider issues that I discussed with Deputy Prime Minister. Is Labour satisfied that the government's doing all it can in the circumstances, including having sent weapons and personnel to Ukraine, about the Russian threat?
I think that what's really important is, and Putin knows this, he has an absolute nose for it, is that we have to be completely unified on this. We have to be strong and we have to be unified, whether it's within NATO, our surrounding allies, and we have to play our part as the opposition also in making sure that in Britain we stand unified against this threat. Because in the end, Putin will take advantage of any disunity and any weakness that we show. So, yes, we stand with the government on this. We think that we absolutely need to. It is outrageous, the threats that Putin is making, the claims that he's trying to make in terms of telling Ukraine what it should do in the future, and we need to stand up to it. But I tell you what I think also is I don't think that we use sanctions as well as we could do. I think that we could be much more imaginative in the way that we do. There is a new generation of sanctions out there, which, to be honest, the previous guy sitting in. Well, there's a power, for example, to go for wealth that can't be explained. Unexplained wealth. And there are many Russian citizens in Britain at the moment who have unexplained wealth. You know, we ought to be much stronger on that. We ought to be much stronger when it comes to making sure that party donations are completely tight. We have to make sure that anybody in the House of Commons or in the Lords who are sitting on any foreign companies ought to be on any foreign company boards, ought to have that in the register of interest. There's a whole lot of things that we could do in terms of tightening up potential influence in Britain, but also making sure that we are not the laundering capital of the world.
I get all of that, but let's be honest. Mr. Putin doesn't seem to give much weight to appeal to his better nature or indeed to financial threats to any of his friends. So what would you actually do to forestall an invasion?
Well, I don't know about financial threats to his friends and not taking that seriously. I don't think that we have been particularly serious in terms of the financial threats to the friends. I think that's the point. I think absolutely, you know, if we threatened his friends, we may well be threatening his money as well. I do think this is a new generation of sanctions. This is a new way in which you can do foreign policy very effectively. And I think that we're not imaginative enough and we're not strong enough in terms of the way in which we use it.
OK, as Shadow Attorney General, what do you make of this rather extraordinary statement by the Foreign Office, naming people that it thinks could be part of a puppet regime in Kiev?
Well, we do know that Putin has been trying to meddle in the affairs of Ukraine for a long time, and indeed more than that. You know, when he invaded part of Ukraine, and we continue to have cyber attacks in Ukraine, and so therefore any attempt to influence, you know, future politics in Ukraine goes absolutely hand in hand with that. But that's why, as I said at the outset, it's so important that we are strong and that we remain united against the threat from Putin, because that's what he goes for.
I'm being told that, in fact, the Russians have actually responded to this statement. They call it disinformation and an escalation of tensions by the West.
Well, there we are. I mean, sorry, but we just have to stand up to these people.
OK, well, maybe at some point we'll see Emily Thornberry versus Vladimir Putin.
No, I think the point is not that. The point is it may be Vladimir Putin versus a united West. That's what's important.
COVID. The Royal College of General Practitioners, their chair, says this morning that forcing health staff to be vaccinated should be delayed and that it's not the right way forward. Do you agree?
I think that whatever we decide we've got to do, we really ought to be working on the basis of working with those within the health service and within the union movement. So if we decide that it's a better idea to put this measure off, then, as I say, so long as we're working with others on it, we just need to move forward together on this. Yeah,
but that's... when we actually disagree, it's not possible to move forward. That's point of politics is to decide what you should do. Do you think that those who, as the Deputy Prime Minister said, those who will not be vaccinated working in the health service because they might put others in danger should then lose their jobs?
The principle behind that, I'm afraid we do agree with. But the question is, when should that policy be implemented? There is discussion about putting off the deadline in relation to that. And if we're going to put off the deadline, then we need to work with the hospitals and with the trade union movement about how it is that we can convince as many people as possible who work within the health service to get themselves vaccinated. Nobody works in the National Health Service who doesn't come into the service, not for the money, but in order to make sure they help others. And, and arguments need to be put before them to say you're not helping others by not being vaccinated.
All right, well, let's deal with some of the wider issues that are discussed with the Deputy Prime Minister, the economy particularly. Can I confirm that Labour wants the government to drop its planned rise in national insurance and also to forbid any rise in the level of the energy price cap?
That's what we want to do. Is we want to cut VAT on energy because, to be honest, the government has had a bit of a windfall because, obviously as prices go up, they get more VAT out of it. So we're saying, drop the VAT. That will result in hundreds of pounds being available to families. We also want to be able to have a windfall tax on the energy companies who themselves are also making much greater profits as a result. And we want that money to be targeted on the squeezed middle, on the poorest, on pensioners, to make sure that they're given assistance with their energy. It's all fully costed. We're really surprised the government doesn't have a plan, but as the opposition, we're helping them out. We've got a plan. We put it on the table. We said, here you are, use this.
When you say you're helping them out, this is a bit puzzling. The Labour Party wants to stop a tax rise that, being a percentage of income, is, by its nature, hits the wealthier hardest. You want to stop their VAT change. You also, by the way, want to keep the BBC licence fee, which is a flat tax. All of these are regressive measures. I mean, when did the Labour Party of redistribution become in favour of regressive taxation?
Well, I don't think that the national insurance tax is as you describe. I think one of the most important things about the national insurance tax is that it's a tax on jobs and it's a tax on employers. And if we want to have full employment, we need to make life as easy as possible.
Employees have to pay it too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it's also a tax on jobs. It's a disincentive for employers to take on more people. This can't be right at a time like this. These are the reasons behind the decisions that we've made, and it's not regressive. What we've said in relation to energy, as we've said, everybody's going to have their bills largely increased by 50%, just in a few months' time. The government just seems to be like rabbits in the headlights, just standing there thinking, oh my goodness, we're about to get run over. But what we need to do is we need to do something about it. So we've said, get rid of VAT, that will help everyone, but then also have this targeted money, which would be available for the poorest.
All right, well, look, let's deal with, this is a politics show, let's deal with politics. You have, in your own way, spent a lot of this conversation telling me about the shortcomings of this government. Last week, your colleague Wes Streeting told me that you wouldn't move a vote of no confidence in Parliament because you didn't think you'd have the numbers. I don't get this. If he's as bad for the nation as you're always saying he is, well, first of all, what does that tell you about the parliamentary party he leads?
Well, look, they have a majority of 80. That's why, in the end, it isn't for the opposition to... And the Prime Minister ought to be... If he's
so terrible, not all of those Conservatives are people without conscience. Why can't you bring them across to your side for this point?
Well, we're doing our bit. We're doing our best. We are making it perfectly clear what our criticisms are. We're making the argument as to why this Prime Minister is totally unfit to continue to be at number 10. And the latest allegations about...
Why don't you try and turf him out?
We are doing our best to try and turf him out, but they do have a majority of 80. And in the end, although the Prime Minister is answerable to Parliament, the Parliament is skewed in that they have a majority of 80. So there is a great deal... the Prime Minister's future rests in his own conscience. He can make his own decision. But then next, it is for Tory MPs to decide whether or not they want to continue to support him. And we continue to put the argument as to why it is. And frankly, so do the public. I mean, most Tory MPs get large numbers of letters from members of the public saying, do the right thing, push this Prime Minister out. So first of all, I would encourage backbench MPs to put the letters in, and then, we will hear from Sue Gray. Let's take these things step by step.
All right. Just very quickly, one thing they will always say about Emily Thornberry is that she's a realist. Isn't the real truth here that actually a wounded Boris Johnson is better for you than Boris Johnson gone with a better leader?
I think that Boris Johnson wounded, Boris Johnson full stop, as Prime Minister, does this country no good. And that's why we want to get rid of him.